Hi there. Uh, I just wanted to put together a tutorial video for the 3 bouncing balls assignment. Um, this is all supplemental. My recommendation is always to look at the teacher's lecture first and foremost, um, to get as much of the information as you can out of that. Um, all I'm doing today is just covering uh, basically what was already taught, just with slightly different wording. I'll throw in, shortcuts and things like that, hotkeys, sorry, would be the better way to word it. Hotkeys that I often use, or where to find something in a menu and, little tips along the way. But they're all most likely things you already heard in the lecture or things that you'll hear later on. So just keep that in mind as you go into watching this video. Um, so first and foremost, you go into Canvas, you read the assignment, you take a look at everything that you're going to need to submit, and you see that you're going to need to download 2 project files that are zipped into zip folders. You need to make sure to unzip them first, so right click, extract all, or if you're on a Windows 10, it'll look like this. Then you'll get this window, and then you just hit extract, and then, in my case, I already have it extracted, so I don't need to do that again. But and then it'll open up the window just like it did there a minute ago. So I already have the After Effects template open and ready to go. When it opens up at the beginning, it has the graph editor here open, so just shut that. So that way you can see the dope sheet view of your timeline panel. This is your effects panel, and this is your project panel. In case I bring up these terms, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I guess first things first, let's get things a little bit organized over here. Let's start by making a folder named assets, and then I'm going to deselect it, make another folder, call this main scenes. This is just out of habit. This is the way that I usually set up my stuff when making projects. So I'm going to throw this in main scenes, throw this in assets, and there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bouncing ball here into our bouncing ball template. The other way to drop it in here would be this way, but then you have to try and center it yourself. And you can just use the align panel. If you don't see the align panel, window align will go ahead and put that up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and center that just for now. Next things next, we got to make a floor. There are so many ways to make a floor. You could, just make a rectangle, make one flat one that's going to go all the way across your scene. But keep in mind, you're going to need to put the 3D scene over here on the side. And if you have a floor that cuts across, it's going to get kind of weird. So maybe making an individual floor just for this ball would be best. That fades out left to right. So the way we can do that is we can either use the solids we have available here. I'm not going to use these just because I already have a color scheme kind of in mind and I don't necessarily need them at the moment. So the way that I'm going to make the floor that I usually prefer doing it is by making sure I have no layer selected. Double click the rectangle tool here. And let's see, there we go. It just took a second. So double clicking it will create a rectangle that fills in the entire resolution of your composition. And I'm going to just pull that below the ball here. The reason I like doing it as a shape like this is because I now have the color options to change the fill and the stroke up here and over here. My recommendation for this project is to have kind of a color palette in mind before getting started, you're going to want to match the color of all three balls. They don't have to be exactly the same color, but they do need to have at least go well together. You could even, like if you have a theme in mind, you could do something like that. And so I've got that. I should rename my layers. It's very important to always rename your layers. If you hit enter, it will give you the shortcut for renaming. It doesn't show it here. Sometimes they're usually here, but it doesn't in this one. So the enter key is a shortcut for that. I'm going to name this floor. All right, so I've got that there. And I need to, mask this out. I can't have it completely cover the entire thing. It doesn't look like a floor. So I'm going to use the pen tool, and I'm going to have the floor layer selected. Now, the pen tool here has modes. It has a mask mode and a shape mode. So I'm going to change it to the mask mode. I'm going to zoom out a little, and I'm going to, you know what, I'm going to, yeah, let's go for it. So I'm going to just click, I'm going to hold down shift, and by doing that, it constrains it to be a perfectly straight line. So shift, click, and now I don't need to hold down shift. I want to just try and eyeball it to center it. And let's see, if I need to make any adjustments, I can. If I already click off and I want to make some adjustments again, I would go to the selection tool. I can select this. If I click on one of these dots here, then we see that this now changes to square, and this means I'm now in the mask path. And I would marquee over them to make adjustments. I'm just going to scoot that up a little. There we go. And the only reason I wouldn't just move this up, right, is because now we can see it's cut off there. So I would want to, if I'm going to make adjustments to the height of this, I'd want to select the mask and move that. All right, so I need to feather this because now this just kind of looks like a triangle. I don't have to. It just would look a little bit nicer. I have two ways to get to the mask feathering. One, automatically when I make a mask, it opens this up here. If I don't see it, I want to open it up. It'll be right there. Open it, mask, open it, then feather. The faster way to get to this is to just hit F on your keyboard. That takes you to the feather automatically. I'm going to unclick this link button here, I'm going to disable the link between the X and the Y values for feathering. If I turn up the Y, we feather vertically. If I turn up the X, we feather horizontally. In this case, that's what I'd prefer. So I've got that. And now let's go ahead and color in our ball. So it's over here in the effects and presets. And I type in tint. And so it's a color correction one. And now I can color in my ball to whatever my color scheme is going to be. So in this case, I think I want like a teal. There we go. And then say if I want the white to be a different color. There we go. So there's some contrast between that and this. All right. So now let's go ahead and get to animating. So I'm going to go ahead and lock the floor so that I can't adjust that. And let's go ahead and go to the ball. I'm going to hit Y on the keyboard. That's my anchor point tool. It's also over here. It's called the pan behind tool. And I'm going to adjust this. Now I want to hold down shift, right? So I go perfectly straight up and down. And then I'm going to go ahead and place that right at the bottom of this ball. I'm going to zoom back out. I'm going to hit shift / to fit my view to my viewer over here. And then now that I've got that there, I need to hit P for position. In my case, my preferences have it so that my dimensions are separated automatically. If yours aren't, you're going to want to right-click Separate Dimensions. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on in my case, I have a proportional grid that has a thirds. I'm going to probably just have to eyeball it, but turning on the title action saved is also ideal in this situation. So I'm going to get started by switching back to my selection tool, moving the ball up to about where I want it to be. I'm going to keyframe the Y position, move over to 12 frames, and place it to where it hits the ground. And if not, I actually kind of want to go a little bit further than that, just because oftentimes your floor is not going to be a flat plank. You want it to look three-dimensional. So in order to get that three-dimensional look, you're going to pull the ball in further than what you think. Go ahead and turn this on for a moment. Let's go with that. And I'll go ahead and make adjustments to the floor, so I gotta unlock it. And select this point, marquee, pull it up a little. There we go. Alright, so we got that. Okay, now I want it to go up to the exact same point. I could eyeball it, or I could just select that point there, copy, paste. So Control C, Control V to copy and paste. And I'll get the exact same value there. Alright, now I just gotta easy ease these first. So I'm going to, I can hit F9 on my keyboard or right click keyframe assistant, easy ease. And now we have some easing, but it still slows down right before it hits the ground there. And before I continue real quick, I'm going to just shorten down my work area. The other way of doing this is just hit N. That'll make my work area end there. This is just so that when I play through, it'll loop perfectly around what I got here. Now we're going to go to the graph editor. And I guess something to keep in mind. I'm going to go ahead and make a, I don't know, just a real quick shape so we can see what's happening. All right, I've got a triangle. And I'm going to go ahead and go to its position. Something to keep in mind is 0, 0 is our upper left-hand corner. 0, positive 1080, right? Positive is our lower left corner. 1920 by 1080, so positive x. Positive x is like you'd expect. You're going to the right. But positive y is the opposite of what you'd expect. You're going down in that case. And then we got 0 and 1920 on the x up here. So that makes for some weird graph situations. The bounce that you'll be drawing will look upside down, right? So when going from 0 to now positive, 859, it's going to go like this. So I need to break this handle here. And the way you break handles in your graph editor is by holding down Control and dragging. Now once you've already broken a handle, you don't need to hold down Control anymore. The other side is already broken. So we're going to just try and make these kind of even. And we're going for a look that looks kind of like if you were drawing. And so Shift will constrain this to stay straight, I guess, come straight out. So I'm just going to hold down Shift when adjusting those a little. There we go. And so we're just kind of trying to make like when you're a kid, you draw the path of your bouncing ball. It goes boing, boing, boing. You're going to try and do the same thing here, kind of, to get that really quick. It hangs in the air for a moment. It's snappy here and hangs in the air again. And the way to think about curves is a little like math. This is the amount of pixels that change over the course of a frame. So time over distance. If you're good at math, that's what you're looking for. So now we got the bounce, boing, boing, boing. But now we got to add a little bit of squashing. So we're going to go ahead and go to S for scale. A thing to keep in mind is that you cannot separate dimensions for scale. So you just got to make do with what you got. So over here, scale. I'm going to keyframe it. And something I'm going to do before that, which I always forget to do, is in position. We technically want to have a moment of like stillness for this. So I'm going to move this back here. I'm going to move forward 2 frames. I'm going to go copy paste. Now in my graph editor, we see here that we have a bit of an odd situation. We have a bit of a, I guess, a curve here. Now I could do one of 2 things. One, I can try and manually straighten this out, hold down shift, and it'll give me that perfect horizontal line. That definitely works. The other option is to right click this and say toggle hold keyframe. What this will do is it just holds whatever happens. This stays perfectly straight from here to there, no matter if I change the angle of this. See? It just stays perfectly straight. So those are my 2 options for getting that to hold there for a moment. Alright, now I'm going to go back to scale. If I hold down shift and hit S, I can see now both values at the same time, so that way I don't have to keep switching between them. And you could do that with any property. Shift T for transparency, Shift A, anchor point, right? And hitting those ones again will close them out. So there we go. I need to then add a keyframe here for scale, add another keyframe here for scale, and another keyframe here. And these are all the exact same keyframe. These are all 100 by 100. They're perfectly just circular. So here, I'm going to get it kind of close to like the 9th frame here. And whatever you take away from one side, you then need to add to the other. So for example here, if I make the width 80, I need to make the height 120 because I stole 20 from the width. I got to put it back to the other one. Now I'm going to go past this a little. I'm going to Control C copy, V paste. Now we're going to go perfectly where this hits the ground here and stays there for a moment. We're going to then, I'm going to just, let's say 130. So I've added 30 to this side. Tab, I need to subtract 30 from this side, so that's 70. So now we got that squash. Stretch squash, boing, boing, boing. Let's add some easing to this. So I'm going to just hit the word scale here, and that'll select all of my keyframes. And hit F9 on the keyboard to easy ease. Go to my graph editor. Let's see how things are looking. I'm going to select these first 2, and I'm going to see. It doesn't work that way here, so I'll just grab it, and I'm going to give that a pretty strong ease in those. And then this one, I think if I use the convert vertex, also alt, nope, that's fine. I'll just try and hold down shift and just get that to really squash for a while there. So real fast squash. And then I think I want this to come out this way as well, because I want it to hold that stretch for a while. So like I mentioned before, this is basically, this means stay 120% for quite, like stay close to it for a while and then quickly drop off in the span of this small amount of frames. So now when we go through, it's snappier. See, I might have made it too snappy. So pull it back a little. There we go. Yeah, that's a little better. Okay, cool. So we've got bouncing. It doesn't look half bad. All right, time to move on to our next version of this project. That's going to be C4D. And in this case, I got to open it from here, go into there, open up the template. Now, if you open the template, or if you downloaded the template when the assignment very first came out, it's going to look a little bit different than what it does now. And so the way it looks now has just a couple minor changes to the render settings. It's set to viewport. You can also set it back to standard, and it's still the same settings. I'll show you a little bit later what the difference between viewport and standard will look like a little bit, and what are some things you'll need to do if you do one or the other. All right, so for starters, we're here in the C4D program. This is our object manager, our attributes panel, our viewport, and our selection tools, transformation tools, placement tools. I guess this is technically part of the transform tools. And then this is the tools that change based on, I guess, I don't know, circumstances. Whatever mode you're in, they'll update. So, you know, if I'm in point mode, these tools change. Edge mode, different, so on and so forth. So these tools update based on whatever mode you're in. All right. So you won't have to worry about too much. The camera is protected, so it will not move when you try and look through here, because you're going to want this view when you're done. But if you need to look through a different view while you're animating, you can come up here, click camera, switch to default camera. You can also just hit this button right here, and that'll get you in and out of the camera there. The way you navigate in C4D, if you just scroll with a mouse, you'll zoom in and out. If you have a trackpad, I believe you can just use 2 fingers and move on the trackpad, and that'll also, or 2 fingers pinch and zoom will zoom you in and out, and 2 fingers sliding around will pan you around. I believe, and I think orbit will work if you just hold down Alt and then move around, and that'll orbit you around. But so if you have a mouse, right, the other way works for everybody. 1 will pan, 2 will zoom, 3 will orbit. And this works down here in your timeline as well, except there's no orbit because you can't orbit a flat view. So 1 will pan, 2 will zoom. All right, so we covered some of that. Here in this, you'll try and click on the geometry of the ball and it won't work. What you should do is select the box surrounding it, and that will let you control that. The reason for this is so that we have a with the ball locked, and you'll be controlling it from where you're supposed to, which is right up here on the null. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go back into the camera view here, so that way we can see this in the view it's supposed to be in. Similarly to the other one, I also have in composition, I have a grid, a thirds view grid I can look at. And I do also have a title action safe in the Shift V. These are my viewport settings. There are safe frames. I can turn on the title safe. That'll show me what those are, and the action safe. But so I'll just leave that at that for now. And we'll just turn these off. These are just tips and tricks that I constantly use. So from here, what we can do is we can start adding materials. If you click on this here, this is a material manager. It's a toggle, right? So if you want to close your material manager, you just click the same button again. Okay, cool. So we've got that. I want to update these colors to match the ones that I had in After Effects. So I still have After Effects open back here. If I wanted, what I can do is I can just I can dock these side by side. So if I slam this to that side, and I can slam this to this side and have them open side by side for now. And I want my platform to be the color of my floor over here. And I want the ball to have the 2 separate colors. So the way to edit the colors on the ball is to double click. This is called a texture preview. So I'm going to double click that. That'll take me into the shader. And I can click the eyedropper here and just eyedropper my colors from After Effects. So cool. And now I can just put these back the way they were, C4D. And there we go. Alright, now I've stolen those colors. I'm going to place the ball texture onto the null over here. So the best way to get that on there is to just drag it here. And I'm going to take the platform one and I'm going to drag that onto the stage. Now if I want more stripes on my ball, right, what I can do is I can just go to the tag on the ball here. I'm going to turn up the V tiling, right? This is our vertical tiling. And so if I just drag that up, I get more stripes on the ball here. So let's say 3. That's fine. I like a nice round number. Maybe even 2. There we go. 2.5. All right, cool. So I've got some stripes on there, a little bit more than what I had before. I'm going to go ahead and I'm done with the material manager. Now it's time to get to animating. So I've seen the polygons on here. I don't need to really see them much anymore. What I can do is I can go to display, change it to Gerard shading. Now something to keep in mind is C4D has hotkeys that I guess are sequential. They're not necessarily, meaning that you don't have to hit the buttons at the same time. You hit one and then the other. So if I hit N, this pulls up a menu of sorts that I can now hit the next letter now. So I've only hit N, I just tapped it, I'm not holding it down. Now I'm going to hit, if I hit B, it'll show me the Gerard shading with lines again. So N, A, N, B, right? So we can do that. And now it's time to get to animating. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go to coordinates. And I'm going to go ahead and open up my timeline already. I don't have to, but I'm going to. And there's 2 ways to go about the animating in this case, right? One is to click the keyframe button every single time you need it. That's usually the safer way to go about it if you're not used to this yet and you don't want to accidentally keyframe anything you didn't mean to. So if I hit, in this case it's the Y, so I'm going to go to the middle first. I'm going to go to right here, 12 frames. I keyframe that, and I'm going to move back to the beginning. I'm going to decide where I want this to be. So let's say about there-ish. Let's go a little higher. Let's go there. All right. So I'm going to keyframe that, right? So I can do that, and then, copy, drag my keyframe. I've got that. All right. So I've got that in. Now the other way is, and remember what we did in After Effects, I gotta move this back a little and have that hold for that short time there. But now, say if I want to do the scale now, and I'll go down, I'll do this different with the scale. If I keyframe all 3 of these buttons, now if I hit this A here, this is auto keying. This is kind of like a recording in progress button, and when you hit that, you'll see you get this red outline outside of the viewport here, and this means recording in progress basically. And so if I'm going to open this scale properties here so I can see where my keyframes are. I have 1 here at the end. I want to control drag this there, control drag that there, so that way I have it just like in After Effects. I want to have it just perfectly round at all these locations. Now around 9, I'm going to change these values. So what the auto keying does is now if I want it thinner, right, for the stretch, 0.8, so that's technically 80%, right? And 1.2, 120%, 0.8. Now you see these values automatically keyframed here. I didn't have to go back and hit the key button every time I changed it. It just automatically did it. It's auto keying the values I've changed for me. I'm going to control drag this to the other end here at the 15 mark. And now at my 12 frame mark, I want to do 1.2, 0.8, and 1.2, or maybe even, let's do 1.3, 0.7, 1.3. Those are about the same values I used in After Effects for that. All right, cool. So now we've got all of our keyframing in. Now that I'm done keyframing, right, I want to make sure that I turn off auto keying, right? Because if I make any changes that I didn't intentionally mean to make, like so for example, I got auto keying on, I move my position, right? That gets keyframed in there. And if I'm not paying attention, I can end up with keyframes I didn't mean to have. So turn off auto keying. And now I need to make this even bigger because I'm going to make some adjustments to the curves. So the curves panel is right over here. And we're going to start with the position. And I'm going to hit, so it looks weird, right? I can't see anything. I could try and zoom in and get this, you know, I can also use these to zoom. I could use 2 to zoom, or I could zoom alt, right click, right? Whatever you are comfortable using zooming. And I can try and get this lined up, right? The other way of doing this is the shortcut H, right? H will frame, where is it? Frame geometry, or in this case, frame the anchor points. I don't, the keyframes. I don't know how to word it, but yes. So it'll frame your stuff. And so I need to make this look like a bouncing boing. You know what I mean? Bounce, bounce. And the way to do that in this case would be, it's not going to be like in After Effects where we get this like strange, like our Y doesn't go upside down in this case, so it's going to come up, and our sharpness will instead go up this way instead of upside down. And so I got to break this handle. There's 3 ways to break a handle here. One is to just hit this, break tangents, right? I can use the hotkeys that are listed down there, B or T and then 2. The other way to break a handle is to hold down Shift in this case, and that'll break the handle that way, right? So holding down Shift, or select the keyframe and just hit B just once. You don't hold it, you just tap it, and then make your adjustments. So that's that. Try and make them pretty similar. Control in this case is the one that will it basically keeps the angle. So if you did have a different angle, like if I go like this and then I hold down Control, it's going to just keep going in that angle. So in this case, I want to make sure I do it from the start when I know it's perfectly flat. And then H to fit my keyframes to view. All right, cool. Now to make some adjustments to the scales, I'm going to hit H again, and then just like the other one, but now this time when I select it, I can do both at the same time. And hold down Control so we go straight out. Do that with this one. And then select these, Control, and this one will get both sides evenly. So we'll do that. That looks good. So in this case, we really only need to render out 24 frames. If we wanted it to loop in the program because we were going to have other things happening around it, there are 2 ways to loop it. One would be to just copy the frames over and over again, right? So if I select this, Control drag, and do that over and over again, right? The other way would just be to select the track here. And there are 2, I guess, repeat kind of options. And so we just need after because this starts at the beginning. If this started in the middle, you could have it repeat the before. But we'll have it repeat after because we don't have anything before. You can just say repeat. And so if we look at our graph here, you'll see what's happening. It's just repeating it over and over again. Same for the scale. If I hit H, we can see that happening here. Now, a thing to keep in mind about using this repeat track thing, right, is that you need to have it be loopable, meaning that there needs to be a keyframe at the beginning and the end. If I had this a little bit further in, like this on the scale, right, because I wanted it to happen later, when I go and look at the repeat, we can see that this now starts repeating, before the 24-second mark, right? So, and then that can throw off the scaling like that. And so I would need to make sure it's lined up, or that I have another hold, like a keyframe to hold this here. So then I would just drag that there and there. So that way I don't end up with that weird result, right? So I'm gonna just undo that though, because the way I had it was fine. So I made sure that the looped region, that there is like a keyframe in place for all of those, and it all kind of lines up. All right. Just something to keep in mind when doing the whole repeat thing. But as for rendering, we really only need 24 frames, and we can loop those in After Effects later. So I'm going to just go ahead and change this to 24. And I'm going to go ahead and close this now. All right, so as for our rendering options, right, we have viewport rendering, which all that means is that everything will look kind of like it does for the viewport. And I'm going to go ahead and in the render settings, this is just so that way you can see what's going to happen when it's done. I'm going to go ahead and just cut for now on that. Right, and then I'm going to just go ahead and let that go to picture viewer. Yes, because I don't want it to save anywhere. No, that's fine. Fudge. Okay, so I need to see the picture viewer. Yes. All right, so I'm going to zoom out. And I believe this is what the standard renderer looks like. It looks a little dark. And if I change this now to edit render settings to the viewport renderer, and then let it play through, yes. So this is what the viewport renderer will look like. It's a little bit brighter. It went a lot faster, like literally less than, like I blinked and it was done. So this to this, right? The viewport renderer will show you exactly as it looks like in the viewport. What you see is what you get. Now the standard render, it's a little bit different. You know, this the tiling is different between the viewport and the standard render, and you know the shadows and things are a lot stronger. If I want my standard render to look brighter, I need to make another light, and so I'm going to make an ambient light. This is a light that basically sets the base brightness level, meaning that the shadows will not get any darker than this intensity. The way that I do that is to make a light, and then after I've made the light, it doesn't matter what light, just any light. A point light is easiest because it's cheaper to calculate. And now I'm going to just turn on ambient illumination. Once I do that, that gives this base brightness to everything, but obviously it's kind of bright. And so like that could be super bright, but I want to set it to something kind of like, I don't know, let's say 45%-ish, somewhere in that region. So now everything looks just brighter. And while I'm at it, I can adjust the tiling on this ball. Say 2. Yeah. Okay. So this interactive render region is a way to render stuff in your scene in real time to see what it's going to look like in a standard render. But it works quickly just because it's such a small window and it's doing it at a lower quality. So this little arrow right here, if I turn it down, we get obviously something really low resolution, really low quality. Now I turn it all the way up, we get something high quality, but obviously it's going to be slower. And the bigger the project is, the slower that's going to be, right? But this is a really small project, so that arrow slider doesn't necessarily matter too much in this case. So this is also a toggle. When I click that, it turns it on and off. All right, so if you're doing a viewport render, make an ambient light. If you're doing a viewport render, you don't need the ambient light. If you're doing a standard render, an ambient light will help. I'm going to do a viewport render, so I'm going to turn off that light. And I'm going to come back to my render settings here, paste that back in. And so what this does here, right, this is where it's going to save to. What this is telling the program to do is to make a folder, right? That's why there's a / right after it. Make a folder named C4D Bouncing Ball Render right next to the save location of this file. So this, wherever you saved your C4D file to, that's where it's going to make the folder. And within that folder, name all the files C4D Bouncing Ball Render. So all of the files will be named this with a 0000.png. I know it says TIF here, but this is just means extension .ext basically. And the extension is PNG. Cool, so that's there. I'm gonna go ahead and let it do a viewport render. Just click that and should take less than a second. And now that's all done. Cool. So now let's take that into After Effects. So I'm going to get After Effects open. I'm going to open my File Explorer. And so you see right here, right next to our C4D Bouncing Ball template where we saved that, there's a C4D Bouncing Ball render file. So what I can do is I want to make sure in After Effects, I have the project panel open here. I can either go to File, Import, File. I can double click on an empty location in the project panel. That will also import. Then I would want to go to wherever I had the save to, data, tutoring, 184, bouncing ball. Here, 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 and then select one of these and do make sure this is on. It'll usually automatically turn on, and you don't have to select, it doesn't matter which order one. It's just going to automatically look for a numbered system, and then it'll turn that on. And then you go ahead and hit import. And the other way that I prefer doing is just drag a folder into the project panel and it'll instantly make it into a PNG sequence. They're going to right click it, interpret footage, main. You want to make sure this says 24. The default is 30, so yours will probably say 30. I have changed my settings for this to automatically know that it needs to be 24. And the settings, the place to change that setting is in the video that I put on the Slack. That is the suggested settings, or making a default scene in C4D and AE, and that has my suggested settings changes in there as well. All right, so cool, we've got that in there now, and next is to do the Adobe Animate file. So now we're here in Adobe Animate. There was no template file for this, so we got to make our own template file, or our own file. We're gonna hit Create New, and then give it a moment. In character animation full HD, and this frame rate will probably be 30, so you'll want to make sure to change that to 12. This is just going off of what I last made mine at, so go ahead and hit create. Give it a moment to do what it's got to do. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say fit in window, right? You can also, I think if you hold down Control, so first hold down Control and then scroll, you can zoom in and out here. Middle mouse button will pan. And then we've got our layers down here. So what I'm going to do is, since we have 12 frames a second, I'm actually going to select 12 frames here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say insert frames. So this is just going to insert some frames there. This is going to go all the way to 13. And I know it seems weird to do that, but it's just best practice. It's just going to be what works best for you once we get back over to After Effects. So I'm going to do that. And then I need to make 2 more layers. So now that I've added my frames, when I add a new layer, it'll automatically have all those same amount of frames, right? And now I got to start renaming them. So this will be my floor. This is just a temporary floor too. I should just name that temp. It's just so I can see where I got to squash to. Temp floor. Okay, right. I'll just make sure there's no underscore the temp floor. Oh, right. Okay, so I guess space cancels special character. Temp floor, guide, and ball. All right, cool. So start off by making the temporary floor. Doesn't necessarily matter the distance. All right, something to keep in mind while we're doing this too. So this is the rectangle tool. There is an oval tool. There is a line tool. There are shortcuts for all of them. We don't need to know them right now. You can set the color for what your floor is going to be here. If this is set to default, right, it'll look like this, and it'll always give you a stroke, and if for some reason you don't want a stroke, you just need to select the stroke, and right here, this is basically it's telling it do not color. So we will not have any stroke. And then if we'd like to select a color from an actual, color picker, we can select this. Now we have a color picker. The default is RGB, but I prefer HSB, which is hue, saturation, brightness. And then I could probably, let's see, if I open After Effects, I'm going to just open this in a new window just to test this out real quick. So if I click here and nope, I can't. Okay, that's fine. So I can't color pick from another program. That's okay. But I can copy my, what are they called? I can copy my hexadecimals. So on AE Bouncing Ball template, come out of the graph view. And I'm going to just steal one of these colors. So I'm going to take the lighter one. Just click on that. I'm going to hit Control C. It's already highlighted. And then come over to Adobe Animate. Control V into here. Hit OK. That's going to be my ball color. But I need a floor color. And the floor color doesn't necessarily matter. So I should just pick something. Let's see about there. And if I wanted, I could just highlight and then delete parts of this if I made it too big. Definitely possible. Right, so my ball color, I need to come over to this. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I accidentally put my floor shape on my ball layer. If I select all of this, Control X to cut, come over to the temporary floor, Control Shift V means paste in place. If I didn't do that, I just hit Control V, it just puts it in the center. So I don't want that. Control Shift V, paste in place. So make sure you have the right layer selected before you put the thing in it. It's also recommended to just lock the layers you're not using so you don't accidentally draw on them anyway. Right, so ball color. After Effects, copy, animate, paste. There we go. Okay. And make an oval tool and shift to constrain it to be perfectly proportional. If not, we get these strange oblong shapes. And Alt, so I'm holding down Shift still, Alt will scale it from the center of wherever you selected. So that's just in case you wanted to know that. Align, there's that window. If I wanted, I could select these, align, and I could probably center it. I think. It might not work. We'll find out. That's fine. They don't work on these. That's okay. Just eyeball it. Okay. So cool. Now we gotta make a guide. So lock the ball layer, open the guide layer, make sure we have the guide layer selected. Because if not, if it's locked, it just says, cannot do this. Do you want to unlock it? I'm going to say no. Go back to the guide layer. Now we got this. If I need my guidelines to be thicker, I can, so I've got this selected. I'm going to go back to the tool tab. There we go, tool tab over here. I can just make this a bigger number, right? And that'll change the thickness of my stroke. But to me, it doesn't matter, so let's go with about 3. All right. So I'm going to make the first line. I want to make it perfectly centered, not perfect, but close to centered to my ball. And now I'm not going to make a vertical line that goes up and down. I'm just going to make, so I'm going to hold down Alt, and that does a copy drag, basically. So now I have a duplicate of my line. So I'm going to hold down Shift, and I only need about 6 lines, 6 guidelines, because I'm going to have, so first I'm going to put this down here. This is about where it's going to land on the ground. All right, so I need 1 in the air, 1 on the ground, and then 6 and 7 are going to be slightly different, but these are going to be the ground frames. And then after that, these are just exactly the same as the in-air frames. And so this is my midway point between, a second, right? Because we only need 6 frames of bounce down, 6 frames back up, because we are working at 12 frames per second. We don't need this to be over the course of 2 seconds. So we're good like this. I'm going to then, I'm going to use the free transform tool, because I use this quite often. Well, okay. First and foremost, I got to finish the guide. Got distracted. All right. So select that line, and let's see. So I've got 2 already, so there's my 3rd line. I don't want it to move much, so 3rd line, 4th line, 5th line, 6th line. Let's see. About there. Let's get this one a little higher. I just have to drag it. Hold down shift to make sure it stays straight just in case. There we go. So fruit. Awesome. I could just leave that way to eyeball it, or I could make a line that goes just straight through all of them. I'm going to hide the ball for a second, and this will snap, so that snaps that way. I could do that. Cool. All right, so I got my guide. I'm going to lock it, and now we can see the ball again. I'm now going to take this free transform tool, and I'm going to zoom in, so hold down control, zoom in, reposition myself. I might make this ball just a little smaller. It's kind of big. I'm going to hold down shift to make sure this scales proportionally. Let's say there. All right, and if I move, let's get kind of centered. There we go. Okay. Now, I need more frames. So how do I make a new keyframe? The way to do that is to right-click, insert keyframe. The shortcut is F6, convert to keyframe. But I want to make sure I do not have all of this selected. So right-click, and only 1 frame. So I've got that, click that, just move it down. Hold down shift, we'll get about where we need to be. So that's good. So now we got here to there. Now, what if I want to be able to see my last frame, right? I want to turn on onion skinning. So once I turn that on, I can now see whatever frames are before and after. I'm going to go to 6, so that way I can just see a close to full span of everything. All right, so I've got that, got a new frame, so I'm going to hit F6 because that's just easier for me. Now click the ball, move it down. Now if I hadn't moved this way one at a time, and then I hit F6, it'll have all of these selected, and then it'll just make a bunch of keyframes. If that happens to you, just Control Z, do it again. All right, new frame. F6, select, move down, hold down shift just in case. New spot, F6, select, move it down. New spot, F6, once again, all the way down. And this time I kind of just want to try and line up with the floor if I can. Looks like I did. Yeah, looks like we're good. Okay, cool. All right, so we're halfway through it. Now we just got to do a little bit of squashing and stretching. So maybe by the 3rd frame, we start squashing and stretching. And I'm going to zoom in quite a bit for this. And if you don't want to zoom with the control scroll because it's giving you a hard time, Z, right. The zoom tool is a bit of a pain. Never mind. Just use the method of zooming I'm using, or else you'll end up struggling, I guess. Yeah, because I am. All right. What was I doing? Editing, right. So make it a little thinner, make it a little longer. And I'm not holding down any button, right? So that way I don't want to scale proportionally. And now to move on to the next frame, this one a little bit longer, a lot a bit thinner. Make sure we don't lose mass, but we also don't gain mass. We just want to try and stay like if we're the same ball, just longer and stretchier. So probably thinner. There we go. Next one, even longer. I want it to almost like a long smear. Wow. Okay, cool. Let's see about that. All right. Now we're getting to the more complicated version. First, I'm going to move this anchor point, right? So I'm going to hold down Control, I think, or Shift. Sorry. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I just need it to come straight down to the bottom. It's going to fight me on this. All right. Now when I scale, I'm scaling from the bottom. And then I'm going to stretch it out. Try and match it to kind of what's going on. Stop snapping. All right, so we're close. Okay, but now I kind of want to have a little bit more of like a wobbly shape as we're going along. And so how do I make this wobbly, right? So the way to make it wobbly is to use the subselection tool. Sorry. So in Adobe Animate, you're still hand drawing it, but you're technically hand drawing vectors. And it's a little bit complicated, but vectors and rasters are images that are basically you're drawing the pixels, whereas vectors you are technically drawing with mathematics without realizing it. So everything's calculated and where all these points are located, so that when you want to scale it huge, you can, or you won't, and it won't look pixelated. It'll always look crisp. After Effects is another one of those vector-based programs. So if I drag over this, we can see we're drawing with a bunch of points. So I'm going to make this wobbly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this point, and I'm actually going to use my arrow keys. So Shift, I'm going to just drag that up and turn it a little. Do the same thing with this one. Just because I want to try and make these even if I can, right? Take this one, I'm going to hold down Shift and just drag it. Oh, fudge, it won't even. I can just use my arrow keys. Make that go straight down. Okay, cool. And then I'm probably going to I gotta make sure to drag correctly. I want to marquee over that and just straight down. It'll snap to the floor. Then I can just turn this to make it look flat. Snap this one down. Turn it. Try and make it straight. Awesome, nice flat ground. Pull this down a little. That doesn't have to be perfect, just close. There we go. We got that wobbly bits. I'm gonna zoom back out. There we go. Cool. Okay. I might need to. I'm gonna go back to the free transform. I'm gonna just scale this out a little, just because it feels like I lost some of the volume there with that. But there we go. Okay. So I got that, and I'm gonna actually duplicate this to the 7th frame. So F6, make a new keyframe. These frames are now the same, but I'm gonna change this frame. So I'm gonna make it skinnier, and then I'm going to so I'm using that sub selection tool again. I'm gonna select the center one, and I'm just gonna drag it up kind of like that. So that way it's a transition between this straight and squash. Just for that time being. Cool. All right. I'm also gonna make this one wobbly. So let's go ahead and I'm gonna take this one and this one. Ooh, no wait. Okay. This one and this one. So this is the upper right point and the center left point. And I'm gonna just Shift and right arrow twice. And I probably forgot one. 1 minute. Oh, fudge. Okay. Control Y will redo. Okay, so I want this one, and this one. Shift. There we go. This one, this one, this one. Close. Maybe one less one on this one. Might be a little extreme. There we go. Okay. This does depend on your zoomage, right? So, if I'm zoomed in more like this, and then I do that same thing, it's not as extreme. So I guess don't follow my exact numbers. Use your own numbers because they will be different dependent upon how zoomed in you are. So keep that in mind. There is a way to change that setting. I don't 100% know what it is. But, so I'm going to go back one. Now this. Maybe one. And then just a couple small ones. Okay, there we go. It's not going to be perfect, but it's something. Kinda, I think it needs to be skinnier and slightly longer. Good enough. Okay, cool. And so I gotta now take all these beginning keyframes, so like just before this ground hit one, or honestly even the ground hit one, because I don't want to lose 6 either, right? So I'm gonna select all of these. Then I'm gonna hit copy frames, which is Control Alt C. Keep that in mind. You don't want to hit Control C. You'll end up with a weird result. So we're copying frames. Control Alt C. I'm going to select 8 through 13 because I just copied. Well, do I need that many? Is it 6 to 2? I could be wrong. I guess. Yeah, 6 to 2. Okay, so 6 to 2. Copy frames. 8 to 13? We'll see. I'm probably wrong. I'm going to paste frames. Ah, it was. Okay. Yeah. 6 to 1. Copy frames. Then 8 to 13. Paste frames. I was miscounting. Because that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, you need to fill in 6. You need to fill in 6. But now the thing to keep in mind, I've now copied and pasted, but in the same order. So when this loops, right? So I'm going to turn on this loop, and I'm going to just make sure it goes all the way to the beginning and end of this. When this loops and I play it through, it's going to just snap to the top, right? Which is probably not what we want. I'm going to turn off onion skinning so we can see here. We just snap to the top. Right? What we want to happen is we want it to go reversed. So right click, reverse frames. So now this comes back up, down, up. Cool. Let's play it through. Boing, boing, boing. You get it. Right? So I can turn off the visibility of these two now. And, well, maybe I'll leave this on for a minute. We're going to make some lines that basically follow along this entire thing. And these can be drawn on with the fluid brush, or you can use the line tool, you can use the pen tool, you can use whatever you want. In my case, I'm going to use a pen tool. I'm going to change this, see, not the style, width to this. And I'm going to just draw on my shapes that I want it to be. So when we're coming down and getting faster, I'm going to have maybe something like that. Or something like that. Okay. I'll just do one side at a time. So I'll just take this. All right, I should have a new layer. Make a new layer. That would be smart. New layer. I'm gonna go ahead and lock this layer. This will be, I guess, streaks. These aren't necessary, but they come in handy, and it looks nice. So, point, maybe not there. If I hold down space, I can readjust where these points are, by the way. Something like that. Okay, we'll start with that. All right, I got 1. And what can I do about this? I can make it start, I guess, higher up. So I gotta zoom in so I see what I'm doing. Say here. And I'm gonna then just keyframe this backwards because I, of course, want it to look like this I want it to look like this here. Oh, I lost a piece of it. Select the whole thing. There we go. Here. I might want a little more of it. Got a lot of snapping going on. Tilt. There we go. And then, so I guess I'll just keyframe that there. Not all of them, just one. Okay, take this and goodness me. Come on, you can do this. It's so tiny. Okay. It's gonna be a lot of little adjusting. So I guess get your streaks drawn on how you'd prefer. I'm gonna just make this non-existent there. So I don't know. I guess I'll get to drawing this a frame at a time. You do the same thing. I'm gonna pause this for now, just so that way this doesn't get too long. It's already getting quite long. And I'll come back to you with that done. Okay, so I'm kind of back, just so that way I can show you some of the stuff that I'm gonna do a little bit weird. So I just drew the lines down here. I'm probably gonna shrink this one. Come on. Zoom in and scale that way down. Come on. And probably shrink this size. 0.5. There we go. I don't know, something like that. That's fine. 0.5. One. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. That's done. So I have that there. That's kind of doing its thing. I took these four that I drew. I did the copy, paste frames, and reverse frames, so that way they would just come right back up with it, right? But you don't need the splat on this spot. You just need it mostly here. All right, so I've done this much, right? I've left some frames blank because you don't need it in all the frames. But so now for the opposite side of this entire thing, I could I mean, the way that I imagine would be the easiest thing to do would just, I guess, modify, transform, flip horizontal, and then, well, okay, right, I gotta make a duplicate. So Alt drag, try and kind of semi get it to the opposite side, transform, flip horizontal. Now I did that with one piece, gotta do that with the other. Alt, drag, hold down Shift, and modify, transform, flip horizontal. I mean, obviously this isn't the best for like, you had a lot, but you know, it's just a little of, it's not as many as, I guess, somebody who's doing a full feature thing. I'm sure there's an easier way. What it is, I'm not 100% sure. But you know, this is what I can give you right now. Modify, transform, flip horizontal, and same for this one. Alt drag, modify, transform, flip horizontal, get it a little closer. And these could probably be a smidge thicker. Let's go with like, I don't know, 2. Yeah, and probably a little higher here. That's fine. Okay, and then, so now that I've done that there, I gotta do kind of the same for these. So I'm just gonna just copy these again. So copy frames, I'm going to paste and overwrite frames. and then reverse frames. So now we've got a down, up kind of thing going on. So that should be fine. All right, cool. So we've got that much. We've got that far. I have to make sure. I should have saved much earlier. You really should just save as soon as you make the project. It's the safest thing you're going to do. So I'm going to just call this bouncing ball animate. I didn't even spell it correctly. That's fine. I can close it out. And I'm going to rename that real quick. In here, BBF2, BB animate. I forgot the N. Animate. There we go. Okay. And I can just drag this once again into my project panel. So, okay, cancel there. And not file, just project here. Open this, drag this directly in there. And then this is going to basically say, it's going to make a folder of, I want to call them SWF files, so it's SWF files, which are a type of video format file. So you're just going to hit OK. I want this to go in the exact same place as the animate file was, so I can either choose a folder, or in this case, I know it's going where I want it to. Hit OK. All right, that's done. I now have that there as well. This is going to go into main scenes. This could probably just also go into main scenes too. And I don't need any of these layers to be visible except for the ball and the streaks. That's all good. I can steal the floor that I made in this one. So I'm going to go ahead and unlock it, select it, Control C, come over to BB Animate, Control V to paste, drag it all the way down, and let's try and line stuff up a little. So right now, it's hitting right on the top of the floor, but like I mentioned in the earlier part of the video, it's better for, so I'm going to unlock the ball and the streaks. It's better for them to land a little bit lower. So I'm switching back to the selection tool, and I'm going to just move this down to where I know it hits on the ground. So that way I can see what I'm doing. I want this to land kind of about there. There we go. That looks good. I just place that way. All right, so now we've got all that stuff. We need to make a main scene that's going to hold everything. So actually, real quick in the AE bouncing ball template, I do know I want this to just be a second long, so I'm going to right-click, trim comp to work area. The shortcut is Control-Shift-X, if you wanted to know. Make a new composition. This is going to be labeled what I want the MP4 I'm going to turn in to be named, just because, I don't know, it's easier. So, in my case, my last name, 3 bouncing balls, just like that. And it's 4 seconds long. I'm going to then take this out of the main scenes folder. I'm going to take all 3 of these and dump them in there. And so now they're all there. They're all bouncing at the exact same time, but I kind of have to arrange them a little. So I'm going to take, let's see, I'm going to make this one be center. I'm going to make this one be to the right. I should use my title action save to make sure I'm not going too far off. That should be fine there. And C4D Bouncing Ball, and move this over this way. And then I gotta scale it down a little. So I'm just gonna grab the top, hold down Shift so it scales proportionally, and get that kind of lined up. Nice. And I'm probably gonna take these and scale them down a little too. Let's see. I'm gonna just, so I can do something like if I select the empty spot, new viewer, I can see now 2 views at once. This one's already locked to this one. I come back to BB Animate, and I'm gonna just scale this down so that I can see what this looks like in the main comp. Compared to here, what am I scaling down? The streaks alone? There we go. that should be fine. Doesn't have to be perfect, just close. All right, so I can turn that off, come back to here, unlock that view. There we go. Okay, cool. All right, so now I gotta get everything kind of looping. So the way to loop stuff, there are two ways to loop things. I can just hit Control D 3 times. Now I have 4 of these. Can right click, keyframe assistance, sequence layers. I don't want any overlap. I'm gonna hit OK. And now that one loops 4 times. Boing, boing. Now the other way to loop is to right click, time, enable time remapping. I'm gonna hold down Alt and click on the stopwatch. Now this is a little bit nerve-wracking because it is an expression, but all I have to do is hit this little arrow here, and then I know what it is through memory, which is just, if I just type in loop, and it comes out here, loop out. So I'm just going to double click that, and now I get my loop out expression. That's all I need. I just need to now drag this out to the end of the timeline, and now my C4D Bouncing Ball loops all the way throughout. So now I got to get the BB Animate to do the same thing. So I'm going to hit Control C to copy, come over to BB Animate, Control V to paste. I'm going to drag this all the way out. And my expression's already there. And so let's go ahead and see these hopefully loop. And if I don't get the looping that I want, let's see, try one more time, Control copy, Control paste. There we go. I don't know why keyframes didn't come over, but we seem to be having a little bit of stuttering here at the end of this. So if that doesn't work out, that's fine. Just turn off the stopwatch. We're back to normal now. I can just Control D, 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 select all 4 of these. And the only thing is I have to make this just a smidge shorter. So I'm going to just take this in by 1 frame. Then do keyframe assistant, sequence layers. Okay. There we go. And that should loop perfectly now. Now I know it seems odd. Why would I get rid of the very last frame at the end? That just has to do with just something about the way that After Effects works. Oftentimes you end up with an extra frame that you'd even like want, and so sometimes it's better to just already make it in Animate and make that happen. So now we've got our 3 bouncing balls. They're all there. They all bounce the exact same time almost. I believe so, yeah. Yeah. The easing is just ever so slightly different between the hand-drawn and the regular ones. Now, we need a title screen. So I'm going to just take all of this. I'm going to right-click, Precompose. I'm going to call this 3BB. Those are the 3 bouncing balls. Put that into my main scenes. And I probably need to make this a little bit longer. So right-click, composition settings. Let's add an additional, let's go with, so we had 4, we'll add another 4, so we'll do 8. Hit OK. There we go. And I'm going to zoom out, so hold down Alt. I can scroll. I'm going to drag this to the right. I'm going to hold down Shift to snap it to the end. So I have this 4 seconds of emptiness at the beginning. I'm going to add a fade in, fade out here. So I can come to the effects panel over here. I'm going to get rid of this preview panel here. So I'm going to just close that panel. I call this, see, fade in out frames. Just put that on there. And let's have it fade over the course of, I don't know, 12 frames. That'll fade that in and out at the beginning and the end. The other way would just be to, so if I have this off, to go to T for opacity. I'm going to keyframe 100% opacity here and keyframe 0% here. And then I would probably copy those frames, paste them at the end, right click, keyframe assistant, time reverse keyframes, and that flips them. Let's see. Oh, I did the opposite. So time reverse keyframes, select these at the beginning, time reverse keyframes. There you go. Fade in, fade out, right? Uh, whatever works best for you. I'm just going to use the effect just because that's easier for me, and I can copy and paste it just as easily. So have that there. Make sure my opacity is at 100% here. All right. We need a title screen and probably a background. So a solid Control Y will give me a background. I'm going to make it just like a pale cyan. That should be fine. And put that at the back. Probably needs to be a different color. So if I need to change the color of this, that's in Layer, Solid Settings. And now, the reason I end up doing that is so that I can see what my color is going to look like already on the scene. So I'll often end up just changing it anyway. So I've got that. I need my text now, so I'm going to just clear that out so that way it's not there. Text. I need the text tool. There it is. And so at the beginning here, I'm going to type out, you could put your name, you could write out 3 bouncing balls, whatever makes you happy. Let's do an interesting text animation. So we'll do this, Control D twice. Three, bouncing. Then balls. There we go. So we're going to do a little bit of type animation just to kind of dabble in what's to come. So we've got that, and I'm going to lock my background here, and I'm going to move this below this and lock that there just so I don't want to move them or touch them. They just exist. All right. So let's go ahead and change the font of this to something approved, or no using scripts. I recommend a chunky looking sans serif, kind of like this, if not something slightly different. Goodness. These are filterable. I cannot remember. I don't know if they're filterable by type. No, it's fine. Just scroll up. Let's pick something. I kind of like Rubik. We'll go with that. And we'll use something bold. Let's go with that. Okay. So we've got our text, and we're going to animate it a little bit. So I'm going to, we talked about masks a minute ago, so I'm going to use the rectangle tool to make a mask on this 3. And then I'm going to change it to subtract. And I want it to kind of be about as big as that is, right? And so now I'm going to animate the text position. So P for position. I'm going to do Y keyframe. I'm going to move it down now. Right, the mask is going to come with it. I don't know why I didn't think about that. Okay, so let's get rid of the mask real quick. We're going to draw the rectangle, but not as a mask. We're just going to make it like that. Okay. So I'm going to take the 3. I'm going to keyframe the position, bring it here, and bring it down. And then, see, I need to do this backwards. So there we go. So we've got the down position, the up position. So it came up like that. All right. I gotta think. So, yeah, no, okay, we'll leave that. All right. So I'm gonna use, so this is FX Console. It allows me to apply effects just using a shortcut. But if you want to find your effects, just go to the effects panel, do that way. So I'm just going to use this for now. So this is like if I'm typing into the effects panel, I need the fast box blur and turn that up. I probably need to make this shape bigger. Bring it down a little. Something like that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a track mat for the 3. And I need to invert it, so I'm going to hit the button next to it. There we go. So now that'll come up just like that. Probably need to take this and move it a little lower, but then that also means that I need to take the initial position here and move it just a little lower as well. There we go, just like that. All right, what I can do now is easy ease those and probably make this come up a little faster at the end, just like that. Cool, we got 3. And then if you want, you can add a little bounce. You've already done it with the bouncing balls. But I'm just going to do this so far. Copy the keyframes here. Copy. And then, so you want to make sure I only have the wipes in. Copy. Come to this one, paste. Paste, right? And then I'm going to just duplicate this twice. And I'm going to make them visible for a moment. And I'll just take the second one and move that to the side for a moment. Make this one big enough to hide bouncing. And then, let's see, I wanted to, oh, I see. So it still took the Y values. All right, we'll learn something new in a moment. So, all right. So we've got that. I'm just going to take these two and I'm going to parent them to this. So what that means is that they'll both follow along with this. So we're learning things that we probably wouldn't have learned until later, which you'll learn later. You don't have to do any of this. This is just for fun. Okay? Control D both of those. Take this and probably make the second one visible. And need to hide it here. And take this one, make it visible. Hide that there. And then remember to track mat, so take this, track mat to the second one, invert. Ah, I took the wrong one. So it needs to be, this one needs to be shape layer 3. There we go. And this one needs to be track matted to shape layer 2. I'll just put those in order so I know that the way that they're associated. And then inverted. There we go. You can do that. And this way, if I want to adjust the, like if I want to make this bounce up a little, it really would just take a moment because then I could just go, so I would take this and copy paste and then just go to this particular one and make it overshoot a little. Just like that. And I would then just make that a little fast that way. There we go. So now it just overshoots and then settles back down. I should probably take this shape layer, scoot it down a little. And same for this shape layer. Just so that way. There we go. All right, cool. So that comes up. And then if I want, right before we get to the end here, I can just, so I'm going to copy, paste those keyframes there and move this to the end and just have these come back down. And I might even make a keyframe here where they go up briefly. There we go. So comes up, and then I want to make sure that, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this, right click, toggle hold keyframe. So that holds that position all the way for that time to read, and then it goes up and comes down. There we go. All right, so I don't know if I need that much time. So after 3 bouncing balls, 3 bouncing balls, so I can at least read it twice. So about there. And then I can bring this in, so I gotta unlock it now. And then I can come to the end here, and then N, Control Shift X. There you go, just like that. All right, so it's getting kind of long, but I'm almost done. All I have to do now is just go up to Composition, add to Media Encoder queue, then wait a moment for Media Encoder to open. All right, once it's open, just going to wait for this to populate in this area here. There we go. And we want the settings to be YouTube 1080 Full HD here. Set the output file location. And so I'm going to just set it to be in the main assignment folder here. Since I named my main comp that I had open there, I had named what I wanted it to be in render. It's already there. Gonna hit save, hit the green play through button, and then just give a moment to render. It should be fairly quick. Now we're done. All right, now all you have to do is right click, reveal output file, and just submit this to Canvas and you're all set. Thank you so much for your patience today. I hope that I was able to teach you something along the way that maybe you might not have learned earlier. Thanks for popping by. Have a beautiful day.